Man, I love this idea, this new series of measuring up, right? Because we all have something that we try and measure up to, and it may be what your parents expect out of you. It may be what you expect out of yourself, or what you think your friends expect out of you, or whatever it is. There's lots of different things that we try and measure up to, right? But the issue is that there's often where we can't meet those expectations. And how do we respond when we can't? And how do we live a life that isn't focused on just meeting those expectations, and we aren't truly enjoying what we do because all we're focused on is trying to make everybody else happy with measuring up to what they want us to do, right? And so how many of you have Facebook or Instagram? Yeah, okay, most of you. How many have more than 100 friends or followers, right? 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. How many friends do you have? More than 1,000? Oh my goodness. I don't even know 1,000 people. I have 8 friends. Just kidding. You guys are all my friends. But we have this society and this culture that loves social media so much. And we're so bad at it, right? It's a useful tool, and so I'm not saying if you have a bunch of friends on social media, you're a bad person, but if you just add anyone that you've ever met ever, that's not good, right? That's dangerous. Don't add people you don't know, right? Or you don't plan to try and know. You have to be careful with this idea of, I find all of my happiness and my joy in these social media apps. Because what happens is you get so caught up in trying to chase after this idea of the perfect life. I was just reading a book yesterday, and it's called 12 Ways That Your Phone is Changing You, and it was talking about this lady that was making hundreds of thousands of dollars off Instagram a year. And her whole thing was she was an Instagram model, essentially. And she turned it into this whole lifestyle thing where she was always taking pictures of her life and these vacations and these trips she was taking in her house. And she said that eventually it got too much and she just quit. And she took all those pictures off except for a select few that were real instead of the fake stuff she was putting up. And she lost most of her followers, and she lost her income and all this stuff. And she said that she was actually more happy now than then, because then she was so caught up in what she was doing that she was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, yet she was thousands of dollars in debt. Because everything she was making, she was spending to try and keep up the image that she was portraying. She bought fresh cut flowers weekly so that they could be in the background of her pictures. She had meals catered to her house so that she could take pictures of them and post them on Instagram as if she cooked them. That's crazy that we have this idea that we have to measure up to something, yet we never actually reach it, right? And have you guys ever heard the idea of the grass is always greener on the other side? Yeah? And then there's the people that go the counter of that, and they're like, well, you should water your own grass. Anybody heard that? Well, if you care about their grass, then water your own grass. And my mom said that to me one time because I said the grass is greener. And then she said, well, if you care that much, you should water your own grass. And I said, it doesn't matter, Mom. I'm colorblind. It always looks brown, right? That is where we should be, right? We should stop even just trying to compare. Because the issue with the idea of, the grass is greener on that side is we become wanting of what other people have. And then with the other idea of well, then you should water your own grass, you're still comparing because you're okay, my grass needs to be greener than theirs. We should all be colorblind, and it's always brown, okay? That's how we should look at life, with this, not this comparison aspect. If you're comparing your life to someone else's, you've already lost. You've already lost, because somebody is always going to have more money and more fun than you. They're going to go on more vacations than you. They're going to have nicer clothes than you. They're going to be better at sports than you, are smarter than you, and get better grades than you, go to a better college than you. So if your life is built around you feeling good because you compare yourself to others, that's fleeting. And you'll end up feeling empty and broken and not good enough, because you'll never measure up. And today we're going to kind of talk about that idea and watch, I see a story in the Bible where we're talking about this, but also talk about how do we get out of this cycle? How do we shift out of the cycle of comparison? All right? So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 20, starting in verse 1. The verses will be up behind me, and also if you would like a Bible, there's some over there. All right, Matthew chapter 20, starting in verse 1. All right, here goes. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning and hired laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you." So they went. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" And they said to him, "Because no one has hired us." And he said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wage, beginning with the last, up till the first." And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. And when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last worked only an hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me, or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first, and the first last." All right. Here's what's happening, right? This guy goes out, and he hires some workers, and he's like, "All right, let's agree on payment, all right? So I'm going to need a volunteer. Can I get a volunteer? You come up here, right here." That was quick, man. She was like, boom. All right, come up here with me, all right? So we're going to get in the camera view, so stand right there. Perfect. So it'd be like me coming to you and saying, "Hey, I would really love if you're sitting here, I know you need some work, if you came and worked for me, okay? And I'm going to pay you $100, all right?" And you're like, "Sweet, $100, right? Like, you could buy a lot of stuff with $100. What'd you buy with $100? A lot of candy? Yeah, that's right. Lots of candy, food, all right? So we agree, and you're like, "All right, I'll work all day, I'll work really hard, and I'll get the job done," all right? And so you've worked for 6 hours now, all right? And so now, come up here. Yeah, we hung out and played foosball earlier. What's up? All right. Now, it's halfway through the day, and I'm like, "Hey, you look like you could help me work, right? You're big and strong. Will you come work and help out?" And you're like, "Yeah, all right." And now you are like, "Okay, I'm getting $100, right?" And you're like, "Yeah." And you're like, "All right, I'm going to get paid, so whatever. Like, I'm working, I'm getting paid, I'm happy," right? So now, if all of a sudden it came time for payment, and I was like, "You know what, I know you worked hard, but I'm going to pay him first, okay? Are you going to be okay with that?" Right? Yeah, you're going to be a little mad, right, because you're tired. But I'm like, "All right, so these are hundreds, right? $100 bill." And I'm like, "All right, don't steal my money. All right, you got to get my money back, right?" So I'm like, "Here you go, here's your 100. And you're like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "Here's your 100. And now you're going to be kind of upset. You're like, man, I worked harder than this guy, right? Like, I worked 6 more hours than him, and you got the same amount of money. Would you be upset? Not really? Why? You got $100, so you're still happy, right? What if I was like this? I was like, hey, man, you look real cool in that shirt, and you worked really hard, right? Right? You worked really hard. And you know what? I liked that you just smile so much, right? And like, hey, you worked really hard too, but you know what? I just, he's doing a really good job over here. Are you pocketing money over there? I'm watching you, right? And I'm like, you know what? There. All right, have a good day. How would you feel? You'd be mad? Why would you be mad? You should get the same amount, right? But did you get what you agreed to at the start? Yeah. See, that's the point of the story. Thanks, guys. You can take a seat. You can count this money, man. All right. Right. So, perfect illustration, because she said it perfect. I'd be mad. We should get the same amount. But here's the issue with that idea, is at the start, she was happy. She was happy with $100. Why? Because it's $100. Who'd be happy if I gave you $100? All of us, right? Sorry, I don't have that much money, right? Like, I borrowed this to be able to do this illustration, right? But hear this. We're fine with the $100. But all of a sudden, someone else starts to get more, and we're watching it happen, and we're like, wait, no, I should get that much. I deserve that. I'm entitled to that. When in actuality, you agreed to $100 at the start. That's what these workers are doing. And I love the response in this parable. And he says, am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Right? Because we get angry at God when we see people getting things. Like, we're like, man, God, I lived a good life. I did a good job. Give me more things. I deserve more. Why do we have this mentality? Because we're looking elsewhere going, well, they have more, so I should have more. And then the person that you're looking at going, well, they have more, they're looking at someone else going, well, they have more, so I should have more. So when we compare ourselves to those around us and what they have and the blessings that they've received, we're never going to be content. Right? Because if we're just looking at ourselves and we're focused on what God's called us to do and the work that he's called us to do, then we're going to be like, $100, whatever, man. Like, I got $100 today. I agreed to $100. I worked hard. I got my $100. I'm going home. I'm happy. But the moment we stop focusing on that and we start focusing on what everyone else has, we're no longer happy. Now we're like, how come he got more? How come he's paid more than me? And what do we start to do? We start working less hard, right? Because we agreed to $100, and we're like, all right, I agreed to this. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to do a really good job. But the moment you find out, oh, well, they're working less hard and getting paid more, I'm going to work less. And we think we're entitled to do that. But that mindset is so self-focused. It's so, oh, man, it's all about me. Anybody have siblings? Siblings, do any of you get allowances? No? Yeah, some of you? As an older sibling, do you get more? Some of you? Yeah? But as an older sibling, are you also responsible to do more chores? Yeah? See, I never got an allowance. I was never given an allowance. But my parents, it was like the idea of like, we'll take care of everything. And I like hated that because I was like, I'd rather get a set amount of money so that I can do with it whatever I want to do with it. And so when I knew there was something that I wanted, naturally, what did I do? I worked harder, right? All of a sudden I became like the best child in the world, right? Like when there wasn't really anything I wanted, I didn't really need any money, I didn't really do a good job at cleaning or vacuuming or washing the dishes, right? But all of a sudden there's something I want, and it's like, I am going to wash every dish. I don't care if it's dirty or clean, I'm washing all of them, right? And I'm making sure mom sees, right? Because we have this idea of like, I'm going to perform in order to get something. And that's what this social media society is starting to teach us. I have to perform a certain way online and put out a certain product, a certain image, and through that, I'll receive something. People will like me. People will talk to me online, or they'll care about me. And we start to do things that we wouldn't normally do. We start to post pictures we wouldn't normally post, or say certain things we wouldn't normally post, or retweet certain things that we wouldn't normally do in order to get likes, in order to feel like people care about us. Why? Because it feels good. But it's also because we're selfish. You ever waited to post something until it's like the right time where you know more people will be on social media? Anybody? If you don't raise your hand, you're lying, right? Like if you've ever posted something on social media, you know you've been like, oh, it's 11 in the morning. I should wait till 3 or 4 because more people will be on social media. Why? Because we care so much about the likes. Because it's like, oh man, I feel so good. I feel so good about myself when other people look at me. I love the drastic difference between guys' social media and girls. It's so fun. Just go watch. Like go scroll through. Oh, I don't have my phone up here with me. But all right, here we go. Every single guy selfie. Right? Like we do these like weird like poses and girls are like what is that? Or this one. I love this is how you know a group of girls is all about take a picture. Gravity just gets greater on the girls. Right? Like what are we doing? You're so weird. But why do we do it? Because it gets likes. Because we're so caught up in this idea of I need to measure up what society wants me to be, and I catch myself, me personally, falling into this trap. I've got to have these nice clothes. I've got to have a nice car. I've got to, make sure that I put out an image that we're all put together, and it's a lie. I'm not. I'm broken. We have the young adults come over to our house on Sunday, and the first week it's like, oh my God, clean everything. They can't know we live here, right? Anybody else have a parent like that? Oh my gosh, relax, mom and or dad. Mine, it's my dad. You're like, they're going to know we live here. There's beds here, right? But we get this idea of like, it's got to be in order. Everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be perfect, or else they might think we're human. They might think we aren't robots, right? But if I come over to your house, and I've been over to houses like this, and everything is in perfect order, I get uncomfortable. Is anybody else like that? Like, have you ever been to a house that looks like a model home, and like you don't know where to sit? Like my grandma's house. I love my grandma. But my grandma's the grandma that has couches that don't get sat on. And like, I had a friend come over and he was like, just went to sit down. I was like, don't! I was like, what? Like, you ever yell at someone because they're about to sit on a couch? He's like, what? I'm like, you don't sit on that couch. And it was like the funniest sentence, and to watch his face like, what? Like, there's a couch that we don't sit on? I'm like, yep, this is the decoration room, right? I love my grandma, but that's kind of weird, right? Like we have rooms devoted to looking good, and we're not supposed to mess them up. And then enter kids into the world, and chaos happens, right? And I've seen this before, and I absolutely love it. We had family friends that did it. Their kid decided Sharpies were a great thing, and they were so great, they needed to be on the wall. And just swirls, right? Just all over. And I loved the mom was so creative. She turned it into a tree. She just kept painting. I was like, That's genius. Like, you make your kid feel like they're a work of art. Except it backfired on her because the kid thought it was fun then because mom did it, so she continued to draw on the wall, and then there was a bigger issue, right? But I love the idea of like, man, I don't need to measure up. I'm not going to hide that my kid's broken. I'm not going to hide that our family is messed up. We're just going to embrace it and go, hey, this is who we are. But we love God and he loves us. Come hang out with us. Come be a part of something greater. And that's what this church is about. And that's what the gospel is about, is Jesus came to save broken people, not put together ones. He came to save people that understood how broken they were, and people that are going to look to him for their identity, not others. You'll never, ever measure up to other people's standards. You'll never do it. I was super outgoing in high school. Anybody else like my extroverts outgoing? Yeah? Just like know everyone? Anybody have families, like parents that just always run into someone they know? That's my family. It's just the weirdest thing, right? Like, you can't go to Walmart like 20 miles away and not run into people you know. I don't know what it is. We've been in Mexico before at an ice cream shop, and we ran into people we know in Mexico. It's like, man, just like, I just want a moment to myself, right? But that's who we are. We just know everyone. Now imagine living a life where you always felt like you had to be put together in order to go out because you might run into someone you know. It is so exhausting trying to live up to that expectation. Trying to live up to the idea of I have to look a certain way. It warms my heart to know that the men in this ministry, the leaders, your male leaders, are so like not that. Like me and Andre, we talk, we like clothes and we like to look good, but at the same time, like, you know, we're cool just hanging out with whatever. It doesn't matter. Sweatpants, sweatsuit, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can just hang out. Just be together. There's no standard that we have to meet. And I love watching your female leaders in this room. There is no standard that they meet. They come here broken in who they are, loving God just so desperately and so amazingly. And they're just here because they love you guys and they love God and they love the work that he's doing. And there's no standard you have to measure up. None of them are looking at you as students and going, okay, now you better be good Christian people or else we're not going to be your leader anymore. I would have quit by now, right? You guys are messed up. I'm messed up. That's the one thing we all have in common in this room. We all have a need for a Savior. We're all broken. Woohoo! Right? Join the club. We're going to read one other set of verses. It's in Galatians chapter 4. As you're flipping there, I want to tell another story of why we've fallen into this comparison, right? Why we fall into this idea of I need to measure up to what other people's standards are for me. And it's because our idea of what is fair and what is good is skewed. All right? So there's a professor, and he, does what professors do. He's teaching a class, and he's got this class of new freshmen, and he has their first essay. And he's not a professor that likes to remind his students. He wrote it on a syllabus, and he says, you know what, that's good enough for me. You're college students now. You'll figure it out. If you want to turn a paper in, you will. And so the first test, 90% of the students turned in the test. And the other 10% were like, we just got caught up. It was a busy week, and we just forgot because you didn't remind us, right? Like, you didn't remind us, and our teachers in high school used to remind us, and we're freshmen, so we're freshmen in college, so we're still kind of dumb. Like, please help us, right? And so the professor's like, you know what? I'm going to be cool about this. I'll give you a couple extra days to turn your paper. And they're like, yeah, like, woo, right? Like, because this is a weighty assignment. It's got a huge effect on their grade. And so they're excited. And any of you that have like turned in big essays before, like know like how tedious and time consuming that is. And it's horrible, right? And if you don't like writing, if you're like me, like you're okay at writing, but you don't like enjoy the process, you're just like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to do this. They were excited that they had the chance to actually do it and not like fail. And so they get this extension and they're like, all right, we're good. Right? And so he's gracious and all the people end up turning in their tests, right? But then the next test comes around and again, he doesn't remind them and only 75% of the students turn in their test, their essay on time and stuff. And he's like, And in all of the 25% are like, oh, come on, like you were nice the first time. Like, come on, just one more time. Right? You ever had that plea like to a teacher or your parent, like, please just be nice to me one more time? Like, be gracious, this is once. Right? And so they do this plea, and he's like, all right, you know what? I'll be nice. I'll be gracious. Go ahead. You've got a week extension. And so they take the week extension, and they all get it turned in. Now, it's the last essay of the year. This is the biggest one. It's worth the most amount. And 50% of the students don't turn it in. Why didn't they turn it in? Because they know that most likely they're going to get an extra week, right? They've got like, oh, okay, based off of what I've seen, it doesn't matter if I turn it on time because maybe he'll be nice and be gracious, right? And so 50% don't turn it in. The other 50% are like, just give us the week extension like you've given everyone else. And they're like, and he's like, nope, no week extension. If you didn't turn your paper in, how would you feel? Pretty upset, right? You're like, what? I'm like going to fail now because of this. And the professor's like, well, sorry. You knew that the assignment, you knew the date, you've known since the start of the semester, should have turned it in. And what do you think they said? That's not fair. And he said, you're right. It isn't fair. It isn't fair that I was merciful the first 2 times. You didn't deserve that. So if justice is what you're looking for, I'll take back those other grades that I was lenient on, and you'll get zeros for those tests as well, or those essays as well. So do you really want justice? Do you really want what's fair? And all of a sudden they were like, oh, nope, good. I'm good with the mercy you showed me the first 20 times. Like, don't give me that now. See, what happened was they thought that they could abuse the generosity and the graciousness and the mercy of their professor. And all of a sudden, when what actually happened, what they deserved happened, all of a sudden they were like, oh, what? No, we don't want that. It's not fair. But the professor reminded them what fair really is. It's getting what you deserve. And the Bible's really clear what we deserve. As sinners, as people that have gone against God and his gracious, amazing gloriousness, we deserve death. But these verses that we're about to read show how our identity is no longer in that. We've received grace and mercy, and we should live our lives measuring up to the love that God has for us, not the expectations that society has for us. So let's read this. Galatians chapter 4. We're going to start in verse 4. It says this, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father." Abba, Father. See, what happened was, what we deserve is death. But God, in his graciousness, in his mercy, and his love for us, sent his Son to take our place, and we get to inherit what was lined up for Jesus. And we get to be a part of that inheritance. We get called into a family of royalty. So stop trying to measure up to what society has for you. Because all of this here is broken. It's a fallen world. It's never going to be good enough. We are going to inherit eternity with the Savior, with the Father, with Dad. And we get to spend forever in His presence with all that He has and everything He's created. So stop living this life as if you need to obtain everything around you. You need to be the greatest at everything, and you need to have the prettiest life and the best clothes and the most money, because guess what? When you die, it all is gone. All of it is gone. Andre talked about it last week. It's vanity. It's gone. You can save everything up. Eventually, you're going to die. Can't do a lot with money when you're dead. So if you find your identity in that stuff, when you die, it's over. But if you find your identity in the God who sent His Son so that you could be adopted into His family, there's eternity. I'm going to invite the worship band up, and we're going to sing one more song together. We're going to sing How He Loves again. But here's what I want is we're going to stand together in just a second, and we're going to sing this, and here's the point. You got to get this. You got to get this. If your identity is found in what other people say, what other people think, what other people do, and expect out of you, you will constantly be crippled by the weight of that expectation. But if you find your identity and the love that your Father God, Abba, has for you, you will be able to look at the world and not compare yourself. You'll be able to look at the world and go, I am loved. I am loved by the God that created everything. I am loved by the God that created all the technology, all the clothes, all of that. He created it, and He loves me more than any of it. So much so that He sent His own Son to die and take my place in the most brutal death ever experienced, so that I could spend forever in eternity calling Him Dad. That's where our identity needs to be found. It's found in His love. So let's stand together and let's sing about how great and glorious and amazing His love is for us.